What happened this morning was I saw PBK wasn't streaming. He wasn't planning on streaming. So, like 10 minutes after he usually streams, I started a stream. And then I go look while in the middle of starting a stream, and PBK has started a new stream. So I stopped the stream to go to PBK's stream. But it was only a teaser stream. He wasn't actually streaming. He was just being PBK. So I am streaming. And if people want to join, they can join. I tried bribing Happy with a bone. And she kind of, sort of. So she's kind of, sort of on Happy Cam, but not really. There's somebody trying to join, but his camera is apparently having problems. I don't know why. So Happy has decided she doesn't want to be on the stream. Andrew, are you there?
Yeah.
What happened to your camera?
Dude, I've got no clue.
Are you on an iPhone?
Yep. Yep.
That explains it. iPhones don't work well with StreamYard. So what are we talking about, Andrew? Andrew.
There we are.
Elijah, you could jump on the stream. You could. You could. You know, Elijah, you could, in fact, jump on the stream.
Yeah.
It is a possibility that exists. Elijah's getting kind of salty lately, I've noticed. Have you noticed? I think he needs a girlfriend.
Yeah.
What are you building, Andrew?
I am making pasta.
You are making pasta.
Yep. Don't tell me you don't like pasta.
I love pasta, which is why I hate pasta.
Yep.
Pasta is delicious and yummy and evil.
Mm. Yep.
All full of carbohydrates. If there was like Beyond Pasta that was actually, as opposed to being made out of pasta, was made out of beef or something, that would work. We need Beyond Pasta.
Yeah. I've got meatballs too, though, so, you know.
Yeah.
Something. Yep.
Yeah, some protein to you know, make the pasta a little healthier. Yeah.
So, Jacob, my family has 2 different philosophies on pasta. Do you break it, or do you wait for half of it to heat up and then push the other half in?
That's a. Well, I mean, if you want to make it al dente, you can't. you can't wait and then put more in. I mean, that's a problem.
Mhm.
More streams of content for the algorithm. Father Eric, how are things at Canon Lawyer School?
How's it going, Jeff?
Hey Trey.
Hello.
I was going to stream because I saw that PBK wasn't streaming, and then when PBK started streaming, I stopped streaming, and then when PBK stopped streaming, I started streaming.
You're a very loyal person.
Father Eric had his summer break on Wednesday.
Wonderful.
Is somebody else streaming? Because I can't imagine why there's so
Larry.
Let's see who's streaming. Grizz is streaming. Grizz is streaming.
Wow. I've never caught one of his streams. Are they any good?
Okay, is Grizz going to actually keep on streaming? Because if I end this stream and go over to Grizz's stream, and then he stops streaming, I'm going to be pissed. I know. We'll watch Grizz's stream.
That's not
That's
bad.
what.
Yep.
That's what we'll do. We will watch Grizz's stream.
Cover all bases.
I
Yes.
don't know why, but for some reason, Grim's stream is not. My ADHD just can't keep up, which is surprising.
Which I will once again put in the chat. For moments from now, this
Bro, it's Santa.
support on my channel will cease to be, and you'll have to come here at this link to find it.
Oh, that's an interesting way of doing it. I have several people here, and I am able to drop all these different. Oh, wow. I know what that one is. I've seen that before.
That's the link to your channel.
Sick beard.
That's
Look,
how
we
I
got
knew
new-
what it was.
Got Neutrino out there, Eve, McMo, all you folks. How's it going, Eve?
I love old people. They have such a charm.
There's Red Pill.
Father Time is an
The answer to
interesting
that
guy.
question, Chad the alcoholic, is why not?
Why not? All right, I think we've kept the portal open on my end long enough. I'll see you guys. We're over at Docs. Come play.
So he's going to stop streaming,
Okay.
and then they're going to
Now
go
that we
stream on another channel, Dr. Lenny Time.
You can't keep up.
You know what? It's like Canon 899 is pretty cool. Okay, let's look up Canon Catholic Church Canon. What was the number? 889?
899.
Yeah.
890.
898 is kind of lame.
Code of Canon Law 889.
99.
899?
99.
899. Okay. The Eucharistic celebration. Section 1. The Eucharistic celebration is the action of Christ himself and the church. In it, Christ the Lord, through the ministry of the priest, offers himself. At least they didn't capitalize the H. So we know at least that they don't actually believe Jesus is God. Substantially present under the species of bread and wine. Species. I always find that weird. To God the Father, and gives himself as spiritual food to the faithful united with his offering. Section 2. In the Eucharistic gathering, the people of God are called together with the bishop, or under his authority, a presbyter. Now the Catholics are Presbyterians, apparently, presiding and acting in the person of Christ. So Father Eric thinks he's Jesus. All the faithful who are present, with whether clerics or laity, unite together by participating in their own way according to the diversity of orders and liturgical functions. Section 3. The Eucharistic celebration is to be organized in such a way that all those participating receive from it the many fruits for which Christ the Lord instituted the Eucharistic sacrifice. I have no clue what any of that means. And Father Eric says, don't trust Vatican.va.
Wait, isn't that the official Vatican website?
Yes, but this is what I think it's funny about Protestants who come into a hierarchical tradition like Catholicism or Guy says, you lost me on the first line with the real presence. Elijah says, where does it say that I can receive the host by hand? By the way, many people don't know this, but when you hand out the bread on Kiddush, you are not supposed to put it into people's hands. You can put it in front of them, you can hand a plate with it on them, or you can even throw it before them, but you are not supposed to put it in their hand because that is a ritual we reserve for mourners. And when someone is mourning, you break bread, you give it into their hand. What were we saying?
I don't know, man. We were going over the canon.
Oh, no, we were talking about not trusting the Vatican.
Oh, okay.
People who actually belong in two hierarchies, like especially the Eastern Orthodox, but also Catholics, they understand the difference between the office and the man. What about feeding them directly? Only if they're your wife, Ben.
There's, so that does that mean I can throw them at people like ducks? Just
No, that does not mean. And
You
you
said
should not be disrespectful to the bread.
you did say you could throw them at people.
I said you can throw it in front of them. That's
great.
what my family actually, that's what a lot of Sephardim do. That's what my family does.
Same thing.
Yeah. Why don't they tell us that during our first communion then? I have no clue.
You can't overcook pasta, can you?
You obviously are not Italian.
Okay.
You're French and you're Chinese. Therefore, you believe it's impossible to overcook pasta. Whereas when it comes to the Italians, they will throw away overcooked pasta.
Still tastes good.
I love overcooked pasta. But I'm the type of person who likes like pasta soups and pasta stuff, and
Yeah.
Elijah, stop being so salty. Get a girlfriend. We are sitting here just staring at the Code of Canon Law.
Honestly, they need to improve their website. That's like a part of the reason I didn't want to become a Catholic, because their website was kind of trash. I mean,
Their
I'm
website's
serious.
been the same since the beginning of the internet.
Yeah, and Jehovah's Witnesses kind of got it down with their website. Okay, they got web design on lock. Most translated website in the game, baby.
Okay. I have to say, the Chabad website's actually pretty good.
Let me take a look at the Chabad website. Chabad.org, right?
Chabad.org, yes.
Okay, not too bad. Center page is a little confusing. It should be a little bigger. It's all right. Definitely better than the Catholics.
Super random question.
Your questions are rarely random.
Yep.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
like,
I just, you need like a opening or something, like a transition. You know? It's the opening that's random. You get me?
no.
Okay. All right. Well, that's because it's so random. You don't get it. You talked about Hebrew being the language of Pentecost. You gotta explain that one to me.
Okay. So at Sinai, God spoke in Hebrew, and all of creation heard and understood. And so each person understood God speaking. Like Sinai was a miraculous event. That's why when in the Bible it describes Sinai, it's two different, like, if it was your modernist concept of what happened at Sinai, you would have the transcripts, and the transcripts would be exactly the same, which is why people lose their mind. Like modernists lose their minds, and they're like, oh, like since the text of the Ten Commandments in the two versions is not the same, that means that like there were two texts and two authors, and then some third person came and harmonized them and all that bullshit because they're modernists, right? But what the two versions of the text actually let us understand is that it was such a miraculous event that an accurate description of it requires two different tellings, because one telling would not capture the truth of the event of Sinai. And that's why, I mean, both of you have, oh, by the way, Trey, are you coming tonight? Shira is getting installed as the rabbi of Santa Monica Synagogue.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I did tell somebody I would help them move at 6, and they're in Long Beach.
Well, then I guess you're not coming.
Yeah, I guess I'm not. I need to be more, assertive than that.
What was I saying? Oh, the reason I remember that is because both of you came and we were singing Lecha Dodi, which is one of the most beloved of Jewish hymns. And it's the first stanza is Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad hishmianu kel hameyuchad, which translates to keep and remember in one word, made us hear the unique, unified God. Because in one version, it starts Shamor, keep the Sabbath, and in the other one, it says Zachor et HaShabbat. It says remember the Sabbath, right? And so we believe that when God actually spoke, it was so miraculous that the two words were spoken at the same time. Which, to a modernist, is like, oh, that didn't happen. And it's like, go away, modern person. So there is the miracle of the speech of God at Sinai, in which is heard by each person according to their unique nature. And in Acts, it portrays something similar happening at Pentecost. And of course, Pentecost is the annual celebration of the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai. And so Acts portrays the apostles doing something similar in that they were speaking and everyone understood them. Right? Get it?
Yeah.
Okay. But there is this idea that when the Messiah comes, there's going to be a rectification of Babel, right? The Tower of Babel, where God confused the people. And what's going to happen there is that, what was I saying?
Everyone will speak Hebrew.
Yeah, so Zephaniah 3:9, Va'az epoch el amin sabara. Therefore, I will turn over or restore or revolt or revolve, or however you want to translate epoch, upon the peoples as safa berura, a lip that is purified or winnowed or clarified, right? And that clarification and unification of all the nations is what Zephaniah 3:9 talks about when it talks about the coming of the Messiah. Which obviously hasn't happened because when Christians claim to speak in tongues, all they do is babble.
Protestant. But Latin is such a beautiful language, Jacob.
Is it? Is it really? Is it?
Yes. It's super precise, man. Legit.
Super precise might actually be part of the reason it's so bad. And when you read the Bible in Hebrew, whoa, we have Richard. Hey, Richard.
Let's go, Richard. Good to see you.
God, we didn't scare you off.
Hello.
You get this verb that's amazing, Jacob.
What?
This verb that's amazing. It's like, I don't know. You can be real sharp with Latin.
That's really nice, but that's really nice. But when you talk about reading the Bible in Hebrew, you have many different interpretations of the same verse, and all of them are correct. That's why we say Shivim Panim LaTorah. There are 70 faces to the Torah.
Oh my gosh. I don't know, man.
I have always found Jewish approaches to their scriptures much more human than Christian approaches, which seek for like a unanimity of a interpretation.
There's a beauty in trying to fit the Bible into a new language. I don't know what to tell you, man. It's like you're trying to take the best of the language and fit it into this amazing text.
So, okay, I have to say, so yes, you can't have complete unanimity because each of us are different. But at the same time, that's not licensed to do whatever you want and say that the Bible means whatever you like.
Yes. I don't know, Jake. I don't know what to tell you. It got translated into Greek, didn't it?
It got translated into lots of languages, but eventually Babel will be undone. And Elijah's making a joke. Jacob's still salty about the Romans destroying the temple. He can't take their language. Spanish is a beautiful language. Much of my favorite poetry is in Spanish, including Federico Garcia Lorca's Verde que te quiero verde.
Do you listen to reggaeton, Jacob?
I think I've heard some of it, but not a lot.
Okay, you'd like it.
I like Celia Cruz.
I don't know what that is.
Azúcar. You never listened to Celia Cruz? She's like the godmother of salsa music.
If you play the song, I'll probably remind it.
If I play the song, my channel might get yanked off YouTube.
Well, true.
But you can look up the Celia Cruz, and you will definitely find her music all over the place.
Okay.
So, Richard, what's up?
I heard you talking about the Hebrew scriptures, and I wanted to jump on and make a request.
Please.
Or I wanted to quote an idea by you.
Yes.
And the idea has a preface, a story. When I was in grad school, it gradually dawned on me that my image of Judaism, even though I understood that the Jewish faith had significant development since the Second Temple period, my image of Judaism was still one reflected in my own understanding of the Old Testament, i.e. a Christian vision of what Judaism was as something superseded.
Mm-hmm.
And gradually, through grad school, my image of Judaism shifted to being, this is Judaism as we contemporarily understand it, successor to Rabbinic Judaism, and it grows up alongside and in response to Christianity. And I realized that part of my education is or part of my lack of education stems from not having a very good knowledge or any knowledge at all of the Talmud.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be curious if you'd be willing to, at some point, do a broad overview of the Talmud and how it interacts with the Pentateuch, as we would understand it.
I have done several videos on that.
Okay.
And you might find my discussions with Father Stephen DeYoung very interesting.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, everything you said there is spot on. What were you studying in grad school?
So the occasion for this realization to happen was I led a course in comparative religion,
Mm-hmm.
and that shocked me out of my complacent and parochial religious upbringing.
Uh-huh.
Right, because then you're suddenly. I encountered the writings of Jacob Neusser.
Yeah.
And he, I guess, is fairly vocal about, Judaism is not this holdover from a bygone age. In fact, it's its own thing, and it grows up alongside Christianity. It's an independent entity. You need to understand it on its own terms rather than on the terms that you have learned in your Christian theology class.
Right. Yeah. There's actually, I mean, while I have great differences with Neusner and that whole school of thought,
Mm-hmm.
They have been very active in creating a lot of resources for Christians to understand Judaism better.
Mhm.
And part of the reason I have my channel and a lot of the discussions that I have on my channel come from the as a result of people listening to Newsner and that type of thing, but then wanting to actually talk to Jews who are in Orthodox Judaism, as opposed to Newsner, who's conservative, and a lot of because in Orthodox Judaism, because it is against our religion to evangelize, it becomes very, very difficult to engage in theological discussions with people of other religions, and you don't know exactly where you're treading. And so most Orthodox Jews will not do what I do. And I'm not actually observant Orthodox, or I wouldn't be doing what I do, honestly. There are very few Orthodox Jews who are willing, like, it's a very difficult place to be where I am, because an attempt to represent Orthodox Judaism in a way that isn't evangelical but is believing is like, I mean, I get accused of being an evangelist all the time, right? And like, most people don't realize they're accusing me of like committing one of the worst sins in Judaism.
So I guess I don't really understand the distinction you draw, because I can very easily conceive of myself as discussing the nature of what I believe in a sort of third person presentation, and distinguish that from me saying to the person, Jesus Christ is the only way to salvation. You either confess or you go to hell, where it becomes a very personal interrogative stance, rather than just like the standing back and discussing, well, we believe this. And it seems to me you're drawing the same distinction there.
Yeah, I am.
But that's not proselytizing.
That is indeed the distinction that I personally make.
Okay.
Many people see that as just an excuse, and there are times when, despite, I don't sugarcoat Judaism. I don't try to ever present it in a way that's more acceptable or anything like that. But sometimes, when you're discussing something with someone, it's a very fine line to toe, and like, you're playing with fire. I mean, this is definitely like, if I go over that line, I have done something wrong.
Okay, so this is not in any way. I'm asking this because I'm curious.
Mhm.
What would you understand conversion to Judaism to be for the other person? Let me rephrase that. Why would you, as a Jewish person, want other people to become Jewish? What is the benefit to them?
There is no benefit to them.
Okay, can you unpack that?
Each person has a relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
That relationship is analogous to your marriage,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there is no standard relationship with God any more than there's a standard relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as part of the community of Israel, which we believe is a sort of priesthood, right? Then I have a particular relationship with God in community with other members of Israel.
To represent
What?
to represent God.
In a way, yes.
Okay.
But that's, I mean, that is representing God in being an image bearer and doing that which God wants. And but a Gentile can do that as a Gentile. They don't need to do that as a Jew, as a member of Israel. They can do that as whoever they are with their relationship with God. And I have no more license to interfere with your relationship with God than I do to interfere in your marriage.
So, in being who you are and believing what you believe, you would not, like, you're not going to actively go out and recruit people, but you would not dissuade a person who is attracted to the life that you lead from joining. Is that?
Yes, we would, actually.
You would.
So in the book of Ruth, you have Naomi talking to Ruth and Orpah.
Yeah.
And Ruth says she wants to go with Naomi, and Naomi pushes her away 3 times.
Yeah.
And from that, we learn that if someone does want to become a part of Israel, then we similarly make an honest effort to dissuade them of doing so.
Interesting.
So,
that seems perfectly in accordance with your position.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so when now there is, and you know, I come from a very particular Hasidic, so while I don't represent Chabad, I do believe in a lot of Chabad is a particular Hasidic dynasty, which I have close, I don't want to say close affiliation with, but kind of a close affiliation with. If you were to say which denomination of Judaism, like which particular kind of synagogue do you belong to, although I don't even actually belong to, like, I'm not a normal member of Chabad, Chabad is probably it. And so the Rebbe who died in 1994 believed that now we live in a slightly different situation than existed before, which is that we do have no, we do not push with both hands, Phlebas. We never push with both hands. That there was a responsibility for Jewish people to help guide the world in general in maintaining what's called the 7 laws of Noah, the Noahide covenant, which, and this comes up in Acts 15, and this is part of my discussion with Father Stephen, is this is an idea that's thousands of years old, but I mean, if you were just to Google it, you will see there are websites dedicated to stop the Noahide laws, a rabbinic attempt to murder all Gentiles. I'm not even joking. I am not even joking. And so
that seems a little over the top.
Oh, okay. I have to tell. So you see the lobster behind me?
Yeah.
Okay. So you know the whole lobster thing?
Oh yeah, I see it. Yeah.
So you know the whole lobster thing with Jordan Peterson?
I don't follow Peterson as closely as a lot
Okay.
of
So in one of his books, Jordan Peterson mentions lobsters and hierarchies. And in one of his famous interviews with Kathy Newman, she asked him, tell us about the lobsters. And it became a whole meme. And like, that's why a lot of people around us call themselves lobsters, and having lobster, like all kinds of things is a very common thing in Jordan Peterson land. It's become an unofficial mascot, right? Mm-hmm. So I forget where exactly I saw this on YouTube, but so one of the 7 Noahide laws is that you cannot be cruel to animals. Okay. And there was a congressional resolution passed in the 90s to commemorate the Rebbe's birthday, which mentions the 7 Noahide laws. And so there's this conspiracy theory on the internet that that resolution from Congress made the Noahide laws part of the laws of the United States and enforceable. And since the Noahide laws say that you can't be cruel to animals, and the Rebbe once specifically said you shouldn't cook lobsters, you should kill a lobster before you cook it, like that is included in the thing. And there's a place in Maimonides where he says that a Gentile who breaks any of the Noahide laws can be punished with death. So they added all of this together, and on one of Jordan Peterson's things, there was a guy who was arguing that Jordan Peterson was trying to make people like lobsters so that eventually rabbinic courts would start putting all the Gentiles who've eaten lobster to death.
How are the rabbinic courts going to enforce this?
Don't ask me. But like this is like, oh, so Jordan Peterson makes people like lobsters, and then the law from Congress would like make it so that they would go around putting Gentiles to death for eating lobsters. It was amazing. Somebody, I mean, obviously this guy had some sort of schizophrenia or something, but this is what you get with the internet.
Yeah, I guess the way that I would have, or the assumptions that I came into the conversation, just as I was exploring what your position was with regards to a Jewish stance towards gentility, including myself, I had a vision like the vision of Isaiah, where the nations stream up to Mount Zion, bringing with them all of their worldly goods and all the things that will glorify God.
Correct. We believe that will happen. Yes.
But that is in the future. So you're not encouraging that sort of percolation of things, metaphorically speaking, into
that's going to happen when the Messiah comes.
Okay, so but that's purely in the future. There isn't a part where it could be happening in part right now.
So there are people, especially, and this is why you end up with people like me who Chabad is known for being very messianic, and people like Chazi, who I don't know how much you know, you've a bit familiarized yourself with Chazi.
I saw him defending me.
Okay.
Against Mark, I think.
Chazi's a pretty good guy. Chazi is a rabid Zionist, God have mercy on his soul. And so he believes that we are at the point of redemption and all that. And that's why he's also kind of very involved in my channel and this type of thing. Because, yeah, I do look forward to the coming of the Messiah and this becoming these types of things becoming an actual reality.
Mhm.
But at the same time, there is a very this is very controversial in the Orthodox Jewish community.
Hold up. Does Hezi really believe that he's a rabid Zionist?
He wouldn't call himself a rabid Zionist, but he would definitely call himself a proud Zionist. God have mercy on his soul.
Okay, so that's your characterization of him.
Yes, he belongs
Okay.
to a very, very fringe element of political Zionist theology.
Okay, if you say so. I mean, Hezi does smoke weed, so you're not really convincing me that he's this rabid Zionist. Kind of
What
doesn't
does
really make.
those two things are in no way in contradiction, in any way at all.
I think the suggestion is that he's a chill dude.
Yes.
I mean, he's not a stoner.
Yeah. But do you really think Hezi would be like marching out in the streets for Zionism?
He kind of is. What do you think he's doing in this little corner?
Like actively, like if he were a BLM march.
No, you don't understand. So this is the best of the Zionists, and Chezi certainly agrees with me. I mean, you remember when that 15-year-old kid came onto the Bible study?
Yeah.
Like, so Chezi has to deal with the fact that his particular corner of the Jewish community is in fact being strongly affected by people who are violent extremists.
Yes.
And I mean, if Chezi actually was a supporter of any of those people, I would not allow him on my channel at all.
Mhm.
But I mean, Chezi is the best of the Zionists. God have mercy on their souls.
Yeah.
So, what is his Zionism in service of?
What do you mean?
Well, is it in service of a grander vision for humanity as a whole? Or is
Yeah.
it merely in service of, sorry, I shouldn't use the word merely. Is it in service of a destiny for the Jewish people carved out of humanity as a whole?
No. So, I mean, ultimately, all of Judaism believes, and this is one of my Jacob's greatest hits, is the rant I go on regarding Romans 10, where Paul talks about the Gentiles being grafted in and adopted into the house of God. And my response is, who was their father before they were adopted in? And what does that mean to say that they're adopted? Like, what kind of polytheistic bullshit is that?
I think
I don't. No, I seriously think it's his polytheism showing, because there is no concept in Judaism that there are other gods who created the Gentiles.
How's it going, Chad?
Oh,
Hey,
Chad.
What up?
Wow.
How you doing?
Good, just chilling out.
I would think that a Christian interpretation of that passage is that all are children of God, and yet all have turned away from God, and some, in the course of time, have been called back to God in order to restore humanity and God into right relationship.
Yeah, we believe all of us are always called to God. We don't have this concept of election that you guys do.
Okay,
Well,
so
you sort of
we look
do.
at you and we say, oh, but you claim to be a chosen people.
Yeah,
And that is roughly where we take our election from.
but
Our idea of
by chosen, we don't mean by chosen we don't mean, so the comparison I make is to Father Eric, who's a Catholic priest,
Yeah.
right? He has a calling, he has a specific calling in the priesthood, and he has a
Yeah.
holy orders, and he has a specific position
Yeah.
in the church. But that doesn't mean that everyone who's not a Catholic priest is going to hell according to Catholicism. And so we have this concept of Israel as the firstborn, Beni Bechori Israel. My firstborn son is Israel. And we have this concept of Mamlechet Kohanim, a nation of priests. But that doesn't mean we're going to heaven and everybody else is going to hell. That's election.
Oh, you're taking the Calvinist idea of double predestination, where God foreordains from the foundation of the world the destinies of individual souls.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. There is strains of Reformed teaching that do embrace what you're pointing to, but that's not by any means a majority report in
Really?
the Christian community.
As far as
So within the CRC, it might be a majority report, right? But it's a minority report within the broader Christian community. If you want to
double
do-
predestination, maybe not, but yes, Chad.
I would say that that people who are just general cultural, well, I don't even know, like before I was so-called Christian, all I knew of was like those weirdos over there called the Christians, and I didn't even know that there was Catholic or Orthodox or Protestant. I just knew that they were the weirdos called the Christians.
Amen.
And all I knew about them was that they think that if you do bad, you go to hell, and if you do good, you go to heaven.
Yeah, so
I would prefer that to what most Christians actually believing Christians believe.
Well,
Yeah.
what I really feel is like that's actually the same thing as elect or double predestination or whatever. You're just having like a higher the double or the elect or the double depressed or whatever the hell the thing you just said. It's just like a higher resolution arguing point for people inside the faith to kick people out of the church and keep them in or whatever.
Well, okay, so while this has become far less common in Christianity over the past 50 years, traditionally, almost all Christians taught that if you were not a part of the church, you were going to hell.
that's actually fair, yeah. That's medieval Catholicism and so on.
And
Protestantism.
there are certainly a lot of people who still very much believe that if you are not a member of our church, you are going to hell.
Very
So-
minority.
I don't know.
I would
I think the Catholics definitely believe that.
Do they really?
For
Yeah.
example, Chalcedon, Pope
Yeah.
Leo excommunicates Pope Dioscorus. Huge controversy. Pope Dioscorus waits 6 months for it to be resolved before excommunicating Pope Leo. You know? So it's like, I don't know, man. Think
Who
of that.
said that it's a minority?
One of the reasons people chafe at Vatican II is Vatican II actually said that no, it's possible for someone not to be a member of the visible Catholic Church and still go to heaven. And people lost their minds.
Based.
Yeah, it was part of the more ecumenical movement of.
And people thought that was, and that people thought that was, I mean, that is what SSPX, one of the big reasons there is the schisms with the traditionalists in the Catholic Church. So we in Judaism have never had this concept that if you are a Gentile, if you are not a member of Israel, that means you have some different God or you're going to hell or anything like that. That's
Are you
just
saying-
not been a part of Judaism ever.
You're saying you will have a different calling, though.
Yeah, different
Yeah.
calls. Yeah.
So I think a sounder interpretation of the idea of election is not that it's like some sort of badge of spiritual superiority. It is
Yes, it is.
it is a burden that you assume, and being chosen is like bad for you because you can't have fun like the heathens. In fact, you have a life of spiritual struggle against the self and against the world.
So
Right, but the
that-
one thing you get out of it all is a really great virtue signal, and that's what
Um, so that is far more consonant with Jewish theology, and it is. I am very, very glad that Christianity is coming around to that type of belief. But for me, that just proves that Christianity has been wrong for 2,000 years.
Well, I'll
so
tell you
wait,
what,
uh,
I think we're all going to hell. So
Hey
So-
Jacob, don't you think the Trinity is idolatry?
Of a sort, yes.
Okay, so 2 billion people are going to hell. So
No, I did not say that.
so one of the no hot
that
rules
is
not to
not
commit
what I.
idolatry.
It is, but that doesn't mean that everyone who. So this is not. If so, this has been Jewish teaching for thousands of years. Thousands of years is that we don't demand, like we don't pass judgments, and we don't believe that like God created the world to be destroyed. That's not so going back to
Noah.
well, no, I mean
Then he promised
Rabbi Mullet, if you would like to rant, you are always welcome on my channel to come and rant. So if Rabbi Mullet has a rant, he may definitely rant. But so there is a particular part of the Talmud where it's discussing specifically all of the sins of the Gentile nations, and it talks about and the various rabbis are giving their interpretation of why God hasn't destroyed all of these nations despite all of their sins. And one particular rabbi, Ula, says that so the 3 cardinal sins in Judaism are, yes, have a good Shabbos, Rabbi. I realize it's Friday afternoon. So the 3 cardinal sins in Judaism are sexual immorality, idolatry, and murder. Yes. And so I'm going to say this out of order for the effect, but he says that even though they commit idolatry, they still have respect for the Torah. Even though that's Dolly, right?
that's racist.
Even though they commit murder, they do not sell flesh by the pound in the market. And there were definitely people who were making comments about the Planned Parenthood videos of selling baby parts. And the third one, even though they are guilty of sexual immorality, at least they do not perform gay marriages. This is 1,500 years ago. And so we've never had this concept of the idea. I like to talk about somebody who's born in rural Tamil Nadu and gets raised as a Hindu and is a good person. We don't expect that person to go around smashing all the idols of Hinduism. In fact, we figure that God demands of that person to be a little bit better than that which they were born with, to turn towards God, and that's all we ask. So Rabbi Steinsaltz, he wrote an article, which I was very shocked that he wrote such an article in a Duke journal, where he talks about the various religions, and he says even Hinduism can be considered a Noahide religion in certain ways. And so, no, we've never, Judaism has never had this idea that the vast majority of people, even the people who are actual idolaters, not the billions of people in India who literally partake in actual idol worship, are going to hell. No, that's never been a Jewish idea. Ever.
I have a question.
Yes.
Jacob, specifically then, where would the Jewish tradition place Hitler in the afterlife?
Oh, he's probably going to be burning in hell.
I mean,
murdering millions of people? No. That's like, come on.
What? I'm just saying. You just said there was no hell. I thought.
I did not say there was no hell. I said it's reserved for people who are who turn towards evil.
Okay.
But somebody who's born in rural Tamil Nadu to a Hindu family and is a good, kind person, even though he's like an idolater, and to some extent, if somebody is born in a savage tribe and gets involved in wars and still is a good, kind person generally, but you're born in Germany and you end up wholesale slaughtering millions of people. That's not you being judged based on what your potential was and how he got an F for effort. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering because I misunderstood you there. I thought you were saying...
No. I'm not a universalist.
Okay, I just was wondering because I was confused.
So
Chad, I think you'd be good at shadow puppet.
With respect to idolatry and Hinduism, there is a case to be made that what we in the West would call idol worship doesn't really apply to Hinduism, because for Hinduism, all of the images are ultimately images of the one God.
Well, according to a lot of people, and that's exactly what Rabbi Steinsaltz discusses in his article. And I mean, I can actually send you this article, which is pretty. It's called "Peace Without Conciliation: The Irrelevance of Toleration in Judaism" by Adin Steinsaltz. It was written in 2005.
I have a legit question for you, Jacob. Don't you think that's a bit of a retconning of the Bible? I mean, doesn't God really say that the Canaanites weren't doing too well and he wasn't really going to look upon them favorably?
Yes, but that was his judgment. That wasn't our judgment. And God says quite clearly over and over again, he does not want the death of the sinners, and that he was giving them time to repent. And you have the book of Jonah. What do you think the book of Jonah is? The book of Jonah, which is very central to Judaism, is about God sending a prophet to Gentiles to tell them to repent. So no. This is not retconning of the Bible at all.
Jonah doesn't figure as prominently in Christian interpretation than the
entirety of Jonah.
does.
The entirety of the book of Jonah is the final Bible reading of the Day of Atonement in Judaism. We read the entire book of Jonah at the conclusion of Yom Kippur.
Good Friday.
What do you make of the plant that withers at the very end when Jonah sets himself up on a hillside and has a plant go over him?
I have a video called The Sign of Jonah where I talk about that in particular, especially in relation to Jesus saying, because when Jesus says all that they shall see is the sign of Jonah, it's not the whale, it's the plant, it's the kikayon, I believe that he's talking. That is the sign of Jonah. And CW, I was hoping you would come on to say happy birthday, but apparently you don't like me. So what can I say?
Hey, Richard, are you military?
No.
Are you ex-military?
No. Do I look military? I'm about as like.
It's the hair.
So I grew up on a farm, but I'm about as like soft and academic as they come.
Do you have a PhD?
No.
You're not as soft an academic as they come. Sorry. Nope. CW, typing it in the chat doesn't count. You have to actually click on the link and come on.
Come on, CW. I need help over here for crying out loud.
Yeah, CW, like I keep on inviting him on my channel, but I'm not good enough for him, so he only goes on PBK's channel because that's good enough for him.
Well, I can see why.
CW has to exercise. Yeah, that's his excuse. He has to exercise. He can't wish me a happy birthday because he has to exercise. Thank you.
Okay, I got a question for everybody here. First, I'll ask Jacob first. Give your answer brief. The question is, if you could ask John Vervaeke anything, what would it be?
But I have already asked him anything I wanted to ask him.
Fine. Moving along, Richard. If you could ask John Vervaeke anything, what would it be?
Well, I would want to ask him about his interpretation of the Axial Age Revolution.
Nerd.
Moving along, Trey, if you could ask John Vervaeke anything, what would it be?
When are you going to build your church?
And Andrew, if you could ask JVV anything, what would it be?
I don't know how to put this question into words, so you're gonna have to live through my rambling. How do you, I guess, classify you know, like when life is shit, right? And like, you know, your thinking's all fucked up. Like, does Vervaeke's categories, whatever, fit in there? Should we like make a system out of this sort of thing? Because like you have some of that stuff with CBT, you know, but Vervaeke's also talked about like other stuff outside CBT and how does that relate, and you know, should instead of going for this like systematic, this is how the brain works type thing, should he go for more like a therapeutic, you know, these are the categories and this is how life can be made better?
Well, yeah. So wouldn't he suggest like practice or ritual was something you're willing to do that with, or what?
Yeah, but like there's this disconnect with whatever all these religious traditions and Vervaeke's thinking, because even though Vervaeke's terminology is good and well, it's definitely not the religious terminology, you know? Like, yeah.
So I'd be skeptical that you can make a religion out of Vervaeke's cognitive science perspective, because it's stated in a kind of third-person empirical language, and you don't see. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm just getting into his stuff, but he's not really engaging with questions of like birth and death, and the good of human life in between. He's kind of stepping back and saying, this is the benefit that ritual brings to you, or this is the benefit that X brings to you. It's a one step remove from the actual subject matter of religion, I would think.
Well,
Yeah,
he
but
claims he wants to start a religion that's not a religion, and my point about that is you can't have an A which is not an A. That doesn't work.
I mean, you can.
No, you cannot.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just like, I don't know, I'm fucking worried about all the addicts out there, you know? Like, Vervaeke, we have all these religious traditions that are trying to incorporate Vervaeke's language through this little corner, and not so many addicts that are doing that. Even though there's fertile ground for it. Like, I watched Vervaeke's Awakening from the Meaning Crisis series, and it's like, I don't know, it's pretty amazing.
All the cognitive science stuff I couldn't get through, but yeah.
Yeah.
Chad, are you gonna ask those questions for Vervaeke? Because
I don't know what I'm gonna ask you exactly. I'm really struggling.
okay.
Oh, you've got an interview with Vervaeke. Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Well, it's great, but it's like, what? So like what do you do now? Because I have a general idea of like what I see, but good thing Karen's gonna be there doing this thing, because like I'm like
Chad, you're a lot wiser than you recognize.
that's fine. Fine. But I'm not worried about that. I'm just trying to figure out.
Right now, his wisdom is pointing towards what questions do I ask Dr. John Vervaeke?
I think that any discussion that Chad genuinely has will be good, because Chad is really good at cutting through bullshit. And I think Vervaeke needs and wants somebody like that to interact with. And so I think just Chad being there is going to allow Vervaeke to shine in a similar way as a chisel makes a diamond.
Shut the front door. It's gonna be fucking horrible, dude. Jack wagon. No, I wish I was like more. I wish I had more like what's the word? Like I wish I had more concrete research to bring to the table on my intuitions. Is what I'm saying.
Take from the big book if you want, man.
What's that?
Take from the big book if you want, man.
Well, I will, but that it's hard, right? Because it's hard to make like direct correlation or direct.
Did you listen to Vervaeke talking about love and addiction?
I don't think so.
Oh, I have to find this for you. This is one of the best.
So the issue is the issue is I think this is what the whole issue is. When God centered and other centered principles leak out of their the grips that they originate and into the general culture, it goes from free to free, or from freedom to free, which is from order to chaos. And then anybody can use those things and start kind of like, fitting them to their own needs and desires. And then they be kind of inevitably, these great ideas become kind of weaponized. And I think that's what I'm trying to get at here. And they don't mean to be. It's not like there's somebody said this the other day. Luke said it. Like, there's not a whole lot of psychopaths out there, really. There's just a bunch of fucking idiots who are meaning well that pollute things, basically.
But there are actual psychopaths out there.
Yes, that goes without saying, for crying out loud.
Okay, I really want to play you this thing of Vervaeke.
But does that mean that love then, it's like the opposite of addiction, right?
Exactly. That's exactly what love is. No, I mean this seriously. So Mark Lewis, friend of mine, colleague, right? Foremost, neuroscientist on addiction. He was also himself a former addictor, right? So he knows it inside and out, literally. And he basically argues that the disease model that we've had, that what you have is like a disease that you're trying to cure, like you're infected, doesn't account for the data. Here's one piece of data. You have, opiates are so addictive. Well, you have soldiers in Nam using heroin.
Yeah, we know all this.
They come back to the United States, and 90% of them just stop using without any problem.
Yeah, they're not real addicts.
That's one piece of a whole. I went to a whole conference about all this empirical evidence that the disease model doesn't work. What you have instead is an agent-arena relationship. I've been talking about that throughout today. When you're a soldier in Nam, that's very different than being a citizen in the United States. When you take people out of a particular agent-arena relationship, you can snap them free from addiction. That's why the psychedelics, you get people they have addictions that are resistant to treatment, and you get them to have a mystical experience or even a powerful psychedelic experience, and one of those can snap them completely out of the addiction.
Yeah,
well, how is that working with this deep, chemical disease? I'm not saying biochemistry isn't involved. He's arguing against that being the necessary and sufficient factor. He talks about this process he calls reciprocal narrowing. It goes something like this. So I'm in a very stressful environment, and I drink some alcohol to remove the stress. But what it also does is it reduces my cognitive agency, which means my environment, I can solve fewer problems in my environment. So my environment becomes more threatening. So now it's more stressful. So I need to drink more. But as I drink more, I degrade my agency. So now my environment gets more and more threatening and more pressing. So I drink more. My cognitive agency and the environment, they're reciprocally narrowing until I get to a place where the environment has no future for me, no possibilities, and I can't be any other than I am, and I'm completely compelled in my behavior. That's addiction. It's reciprocal narrowing. I was literally at lunch with Mark, and I said, but Mark, if reciprocal narrowing is possible, isn't reciprocal opening possible? And he went, yes. Of course. Oh my God. You know what reciprocal opening is? Love. That's how you get people to fall in love, not just romantic love, friendship love, fellowship love, familial love, reciprocal opening.
But wait.
Two people, bring them together. I disclose something of myself, and if you reciprocate by disclosing something about yourself, and then I reciprocate, and we get to see more and more, and we reciprocally open, it's called mutually accelerating disclosure, the work by Aaron. That's the last name of the researcher. That's what love is. Love is the opposite, literally the opposite of addiction.
Okay.
That's fine. That's fine. And I agree with almost everything he said. Almost everything he said. Mm-hmm. Other than the fact that, can you convince yourself to fall in love with somebody?
No.
Yep. That's right. You can't just convince yourself to fall in love with just anybody. So there's a big issue there. I mean, this is why it's not merely, I mean, it is merely love, but you can't just aim that at anything, because that's just another reciprocal narrow. So like you have to, that's why a spiritual solution is probably what works best. I don't like the disease model. I don't think it is a disease. I think it's an illness. And I think that this is one of the things that happened as a result of well-meaning AA members making their way into the medical fraternity, and then from there into the arena of law, and then opening all this language up to being basically, replicating this language onto everybody who seems to be an addict. And I also agree that whole thing about Vietnam and people coming back from Vietnam and then like never using heroin again. Yeah, they're not real addicts. They just were recreational users at the time. So, they may have been physically addicted to heroin, That's different. There are plenty of people who are physically addicted to alcohol that once they actually become separated from alcohol and they're no longer physically addicted to alcohol, they have no problem leaving it or whatever. They may even be able to drink it again with no problem. But then there are people who are actual alcoholics, and alcohol is merely a symptom. But the way that it shows up symptomatically is once they begin drinking, they actually can't control how much they drink for whatever reason. We don't really know what that is. Maybe the scientists can, but even still, it doesn't. Even if they could paint the perfect picture, it doesn't come close to solving the problem of why I keep going back to it. You see, and why I can't just convince myself to not drink and then change my mind and live a life that is good. You know.
So I have an example. I smoked cigarettes for 15 years, and when I went on my honeymoon, before I got on the plane, I had my last cigarette, and I walked away from it at that point. The crippling addiction was broken, and this is the Agent Arena effect, I think, in action.
Well, are you on Jacob's Discord at all, Chad?
Me? No.
No? Are you killing me? I wrote a bunch of stuff post Amalek, and I'll send it over.
Hang on a second. Say that again?
I wrote a bunch of stuff post Amalek, but I'll send it over or something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
There was a video I made in which Andrew decided to hijack my stream and make it all about himself and showboat and be like a drama queen.
Yep.
I was actually just thinking about sending that stream over to Justin because of the documentary he's making.
Go for it.
I might just do that. In fact, you know what? I will just do that.
Question, Chad. If I do let's say I'm an addict, I'm doing heroin, and then I do psychedelics and I stop doing heroin. Would you ever say I was a real addict or not?
I'm sorry, say that again?
I'm a heroin addict, and then I do psychedelics, and then I no longer do heroin because of it. Would I count as a genuine addict in your eyes?
I don't know. I think so. Like,
why?
So, like I say, so yeah, I should be careful with using the real word or not, because it's weird. Because like there are people who are, let's say, maybe I should use acute, and chronic is probably a better category than real.
Mm-hmm.
I think essentially probably what happens with those who have their psychic changes via the psychedelic are having the same thing that the person who is having a spiritual awakening as a result of steps. They're just having a different avenue. I would say it would, in my opinion, would be dangerous for somebody like me to toy with that idea. I think if I've rigorously tried to submit to the steps and that didn't work, then the last ditch effort might be valid to doing the psychedelic.
Yeah, I do think doing it as a last ditch effort is probably going to make you worse rather than if you're doing it in combination with.
Yeah, I mean, even Bill Wilson was using psychedelic, was involved in LSD research as a patient.
Yeah,
and what he was trying to do was, he was really interested in helping alcoholics. He had a spiritual awakening, and instead of just co-signing something to the public, he's like, well, you can be the guinea pig on me. I've had a psychic change.
Mm-hmm.
And he thought it was a great idea, but all the people that were around him thought it was a terrible idea for AA as a whole, and that's probably true. I think that's probably a good assessment.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason why. Why is it that somebody can get hypnotized to quit smoking, but you never hear about that when it comes to quitting drinking?
Is that true? That you can't get hypnotized not to drink?
I've never heard it advertised. I've always heard advertisements that we can help you quit smoking, we can help you do these other things, but they never say quit drinking. So I don't know. I mean, here's another interesting idea. Now, I'm not against medicine. I'm not. I think medicine is good and it has its place. But there's a medication out there called Vivitrol, and it's used to help reduce cravings. Okay.
Mhm.
And what'll happen is people will go on Vivitrol, and they'll be prescribed Vivitrol for a couple of years, and they won't have cravings. And then the moment that they get off Vivitrol, they drink again. I've seen this time and again. Like going into detox, there'll be people that go in there and say, I didn't need AA. I didn't drink for a couple of years, and I was like, well, what happened? Well, I was on Vivitrol. Well, then what happened? Well, I came out Vivitrol and then I drank again. Like, so Vivitrol isn't a solution. What it is it's a cushion that should be utilized while trying to take the steps, because otherwise it's just a Band-Aid on a head wound. It doesn't really transform the person.
Are there any side effects of Vivitrol? Because like you could just do that lifelong, you know?
Yeah, but sure. I mean, that's fine. But like, I also had a guy he would still drink on it. And he was like, dude, you got to try this. This is great. It's like, he called it the Sinclair method. You can look it up. And I was like, I'm not doing that, dude. And he's like, dude, but I'm not drunk. But when he's telling me this, he's slurring his voice. And I'm not trying to be rude or any of that stuff. Like, this concerns me, man. And honestly, people have their issues with the steps and stuff because it mentions God, but it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's pretty open. It's a pretty open concept. And the only reason why one wouldn't do it is because they're belligerently opposed to it. The God idea. And
there is a Buddhist 12 steps, apparently. So
I think it's an 8th step or 10th step.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Vervaeke talks about them. He thinks that they actually are more effective, and that might be because of the culture that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
And Bill Wilson wasn't against them, that approach either. Early on in the 12-step saga, there was one of those cultures got a hold of the 12 steps and they took God out of it. And the early AA members that were in the States in the Western culture were really freaking out, and they were telling Bill, you gotta stop these people. And he said, why? He said, everybody has the right to be wrong. They can do what they want. And so that's the kind of openness that AA has. But to a degree, there's some of that openness that I think was not good. I don't know. But all the steps do, I don't know, it's hard to explain. All it really does is you reach a point where you're at the end of your reciprocal narrowed road, and you're kind of like at a desperate place. You know, it's like, I refuse to live this way anymore. I refuse to feel this way. And the last place I want to go is AA, and the last thing I want to do is AA, but fucking, I've tried every fucking thing else, and now I got to deal with these fucking idiots. So then you do it, because not because you want to, but because all the other options are burnt up.
Yeah, the best depiction of desperation I ever saw was Crime and Punishment. Absolutely amazing. The fever dreams were like hella, I don't know, crazy.
So, yeah, it's the only reason why people do it. It's not an intellectual exercise either. But again, back to his point, I agree with him. I don't like the disease model. I don't like that it's been. I cringe every time I hear it. Never once in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous do they call it a disease. They call resentment a spiritual disease, but they never call alcoholism a disease. They call it an illness. And that might be splitting hairs, but that's what we like to do. And I also kind of don't like that they ended up eventually, and this might be a really unpopular position, but it wasn't great that they would just throw drunks in the asylums. That wasn't great, but I also don't think it was great that they stopped doing it.
Yeah.
So that's weird. All that's weird. But yeah, my overall argument is how because what AA definitely did was change the entire approach to how people viewed addiction and alcoholism. Like forever. They changed it forever. And they actually changed it to the point where the hospitals started changing how they dealt with things and talked about things. And then eventually it did make its way into the law. And then eventually it did make its way from the law into schools and into the culture. And there's an attitude that made its way into the culture, which I think is kind of like our cancel culture eventually. This all-inclusiveness. That's my argument. And I'll probably burn hell for it.
I doubt you'll burn in hell for it.
Well, I'm still waiting to hear back from a guy that I called because I really needed his direction on this. But he's not called me. He must be at work. What's up, Bruce?
Hey, Chad. How's it going? Hey,
wonderful, man. Bruce, I got to ask you real quick. Have you listened to Sleep Token?
No, I've heard 3 or 4 people mention the band, and I've yet to do it. I'll put it on there and listen to it today when I work out.
Dude.
How is it?
I think it's great.
Yeah. I've heard at least 2 or 3 people mention this band.
The latest record, I'd listen from the beginning and just go from the beginning of the record and run all the way through.
All right.
It's impressive.
Yeah. It's always hard for me with like when I look them up, I'm like, It's hard when you see them, but that's why I kind of wish like I didn't like albums didn't have faces of the band or like anything on it. I just listen to the music so it doesn't influence how I appreciate it.
Right.
But I'll listen tonight.
Yeah. Cool. That's what I like about them though, is that mysterious element is I think something kind of missing in that whole entertainment realm.
Well, they're kind of like prog metal, right? Sort of progressive.
They're prog in this way. You know how Wings has the song Band on the Run?
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like 2 or 3 different songs, good songs mashed together. That's how they're prog.
I like that stuff. Yeah, that's good.
But not that genre, but like that concept. But now take it. I think it's funny. I think it's actually like Taylor Swift, but with moments of gent guitars and
I like
hip hop and R&B.
Yeah, I dig that genre clash.
Yeah,
I like that's why I love Dance Gavin Dance so much. They do that too. It's like that same kind of mishmash. It's like this R&B vocalist and then this chaotic band.
Yeah, this dude's the fire vocalist, dude.
Cool. Yeah, I'll definitely listen. It sounds like good lifting music.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to you earlier. You were talking about AA. Yeah, it's so hard, man. Seeing guys in that situation, and girls, but I don't know many girls. It's kind of interesting. I'm sure there are women that do AA, but it's just not as common.
Used to
but
not
it's-
be as common. It's
right.
far more common now, and it used to also not be common that young people were in AA.
Yeah.
But I would say it's very common now that young people and women are in AA. And
Yeah.
a lot of this has to do with I think the fallacy of having men's groups, women's groups, young people's groups, and crushing the basic principle of we are people who normally would not mix. That is a principle that should be embraced.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's interesting though, because you were talking about how somebody has like a replacement substance they can use in the meantime, sort of like methadone or something, but for alcoholics. That replacement thing is fascinating, because at what point are you now just trading the substance, but you haven't dealt with maybe the core of the reasons? But also, like, there's a whole world of that in many things, and so it's a trade-off of addiction and substance, and whether or not you can survive with the symptoms, but as a bridge to get to the other side of dealing with the core issues, I could see it being useful if your habit is to get, like, if you're trying to break the habit of like buying a fifth and then taking it home, and that whole experience you get when you do that, it may work for that. But if you're not able to deal with, like, I must have this substance for the emotional support that it provides, it's going to be tough to break it no matter what replacement you use.
That's why I don't like. There's a reliance that gets placed upon it, and that will then become your god. And so I don't think I don't like it. But I also, as an AA member, I'm encouraged to work with and not against medicine. So it's a fine line. I would say that it's not a solution. I don't have experience that being a solution.
No, I see what you mean. Is it because I guess the question is, to have a solution, you have to know what the problem is, right?
Yeah.
And so what's the problem?
Just going to meetings is a solution either. So,
I'm not sure you have to know what the problem is to. I think it's possible that sometimes things get solved without actually knowing what the problem is.
Well, AA will say that the problem is very simple: selfishness and self-centeredness. That's the root of the problem, and that's it. And that's what they address, actually.
Well, wouldn't you have to, like, in an effort to even know that something was solved, wouldn't you have to know what the problem is, or are you only looking at the symptoms?
Well, that's the problem. The problem is,
because you wouldn't even be able to say it was solved,
symptoms. Right? If the symptoms stop, you may you may have solved the problem, right?
May have, yeah.
Yeah, and this is actually part of what goes on in a lot of medicine. Is we do things that appear to solve whatever the problem is, but we don't know.
Yeah, they treat symptoms.
Yeah, and look, sometimes that's the best you got, and that's good enough.
Yeah, unless the symptoms rear their head again, and so the treatment, then you have to address. Either do you keep doing the same thing and addressing the symptoms, or do you have to go into another direction that addresses the the cause of the symptoms?
Right, but okay, so this is the reason I'm making this point is because there's a level of agnosticism. Like, as I am taking my courses to become a clinical social worker, right? One of the things that bothers me is people who demand that we know why something works, or have to have a theoretical framework when and it's nice to have a theoretical framework that helps you better understand what's going on and help people, but ultimately when it comes to engineering and medicine and a lot of stuff like that, it's like, to hell with your theoretical framework. Does this work or not?
Right. Well,
Yeah, you're measuring the efficacy as to whether or not the symptoms are resolved.
So in AA, the symptoms would be drinking is a symptom.
Okay. Yeah.
Alcohol is a symptom.
Mhm.
And that the problem again is what we basically would say is a spiritual malady, which really or separation between me and my fellows, looks like that manifests like irritability, restlessness, and discontentedness. Those are all like manifestations of those are like noticeable manifestations and phenomenological manifestations of the problem of selfishness and self-centeredness, also known as the spiritual malady. And and so like a lot of people will say, well, it's a trauma thing. Well, for some, yes, not for all. You don't. The other part about medicine that bothers me is that everybody wants to throw trauma as like this cause, and it's not always the cause. So there's that. But why do the steps work? Who the fuck knows? I don't know. I don't know how they work. All I know is that they have worked. And I've never seen them not work with people who actually make it their business to surrender to the process.
Yeah, well, I guess that's where the rub a little bit, because it's like, do they work? What happens when someone does follow the steps and they don't work?
I'm
and
not.
So then are the steps made in such a way that they can only be fulfilled when they work? So are the steps truly useful in that regard? I'm not debating its efficacy. I'm just saying like sort of self-fulfilling steps in that regard.
Well, so like I've heard somebody say like these steps don't work for me. It's like, well, are you working for them?
Yeah, right? I agree. Yeah.
And so that's I think why they might not take is because they might not be, doing them. It might be they might be getting bad direction. They might not be getting. They might have some sort of temperament where they like, no, fuck everything you say. I'm not buying what you're saying. I can do this myself. Like, good luck, man. Like,
yeah, that's the thing, right? So when if their temperament doesn't fit, then are the steps the issue, or are the steps not addressing the core of the problem?
Well, I don't think the steps are the issue.
Right.
The steps are really basic. It's like, but again, they're basic if you understand them. Like the powerlessness idea. There are a lot of people who don't like this because it says it's not. It's degrading or something. Like, no, that all it is admitting that I can't seem to change my mind about my situation. Just like I can't convince myself to fall in love with somebody, right? Like that's for some reason I can't provide enough power to make me feel better and to just not drink. Also partly because I know like there's something in alcohol that really sets me free. Of course I'm going to go back. I have actual phenomenological experience with that working with alcohol and with nothing else like alcohol. So of course I have this powerless issue, but that just means I need to find a different power. Well, and then we start getting weirded out because now you're talking about some woo shit like or God or whatever, and I don't want nothing to do with that. Well, I understand, and the way I had to work around that was I made the steps, the principles in the steps were my higher power, and I would just follow those. So it was kind of a self-imposed will, but that's why maybe it only went so far until that got of my understanding, and it went from the steps as the higher power to the concept of seeking God as the higher power, which was I don't know what God is, but I'm going to look for him, and that was that. So the idea of seeking itself was a higher power for a while, which led me to where I'm at now. So I don't know if that's all very complicated for you guys, but it makes a lot of sense to me.
I like it.
It was a goal that you had set that was achievable in some way.
Right. Well, they said God couldn't would if you were sought, but then they also said the primary principle here is to you're not God, and whatever God is would have you help others. And so the best way to do that is help them take these steps. And so that was a huge thing. It gave me purpose and use. It took a dope like me and made me useful to alcoholics, which was really good for a guy like me. And it also said that you're not the shit, Chad. You're just a channel. And that's why
so you have purpose. Right. Yeah, you have purpose outside of your own. Or in a sense, you're still gratifying your desires, but your desires are changed for others.
Mm-hmm.
So you are still like fulfilling some desire that you have, but you've replaced it with, putting others before yourself or seeing them succeed. And that desire that you had for maybe making yourself feel good with alcohol is, somewhat replaced with let's make another experience the peace that, is possible by getting power over this addiction.
Yeah. I like that you call it a desire because I think like the root of desires, it means something like God-given. And so, yeah, it's something that's already inside me. I think when Peterson says that we're meaning-seeking machines or something like this, we're born with this, I think that's true. It's like an instinct. And that the program helps, fulfills that instinct. And then, there's all sorts of principles wrapped up in there, like more will be revealed. That's a principle. So it just means like this is really bottomless, which is still true today. For me. So it's really simple though. It's not complicated. But I always would love people in the corner to just like go and read pages 60 to 63 in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous and see if you see yourself in there and read it in the first person. And if you don't see yourself in there, I don't know how you're a person. It's terrifying.
You said it was book 60 or 66, page 66 through
pages 60 through 63.
60 through 63.
That's right.
In the big book?
Many of us exclaimed, "What an order! I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear three pertinent ideas. One, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. C, that God could and would if he were sought. Being convinced, we were at step 3, which is that we decided to turn our will and our life over to God as we understood him. Just what do we mean by that? And just what do we do? The first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. On that basis, we are almost always in collision with something or somebody, even though our motives are good. Most people try to live by self-propulsion. Each person is like an actor who wants to run the whole show, is forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, and the rest of the players in his own way. If his arrangements would only stay put, if only people would do as he wished, The show would be great. Everybody, including himself, would be pleased. Life would be wonderful. In trying to make these arrangements, our actor may sometimes be quite virtuous. He may be kind, considerate, patient, generous, even modest and self-sacrificing. On the other hand, he may be mean, egotistical, selfish, and dishonest. But as with most humans, he is more likely to have varied traits. What usually happens? The show doesn't come off very well. He begins to think life doesn't treat him right. He decides to exert himself more. He becomes, on the next occasion, still more demanding or gracious, as the case may be. Still, the play does not suit him. Admitting he may be somewhat at fault, he is sure that other people are more to blame. He becomes angry, indignant, self-pitying. What is his basic trouble? Is he not really a self-seeker even when trying to be kind? Is he not a victim of the delusion that he can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if he only manages well? Is it not evident to all the rest of the players that these are the things he wants? And do not his actions make each of them wish to retaliate, snatching all they can get out of this show? Is he not, even in his best moments, a producer of confusion rather than harmony? Our actor is self-centered, egocentric, as people like to call it nowadays. He is like the retired businessman who lolls in the Florida sunshine in the winter, complaining of the sad state of the nation, the minister who sighs over the sins of the 20th century, politicians and reformers who are sure all would be utopia if the rest of the world would only behave, the outlaw safecracker who thinks society has wronged him, and the alcoholic who has lost all and is locked up. Whatever our protestations, are not most of us concerned with ourselves, our resentments, or our self-pity? Selfishness, self-centeredness, that, we think, is the root of our troubles. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt us, seemingly without provocation, but we invariably find that at some time in the past, we have made decisions based on self, which later placed us in a position to be hurt. So our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. They arise out of ourselves, and the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. Above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. We must, or it kills us. God makes that possible. And there often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without his aid. Many of us had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but we could not live up to them, even though we would have liked to. Neither could we reduce our self-centeredness much by wishing or trying on our own power. We had to have God's help. This is the how and why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. Next, we decided that hereafter in this drama of life, God was going to be our director. He is the principal. We are his agents. He is the Father, and we are his children. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept was the keystone of the new and triumphant arc through which we passed to freedom. When we sincerely took such a position, all sorts of remarkable things followed. We had a new employer, being all powerful. He provided what we needed if we kept him close to him and performed his work well. Established on such a footing, we became less and less interested in ourselves, our little plans and designs. More and more we became interested in seeing what we could contribute to life. As we felt new power flow in, as we enjoyed a peace of mind, as we discovered we could face life successfully, as we became conscious of his presence, we began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, and the hereafter. We were reborn. We were now at step 3. Many of us said to our Maker as we understood him, God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. We thought well before taking this step, making sure we were ready, that we could at last abandon ourselves utterly to him. We found it very desirable. What?
I would stop there. Yeah.
Okay. It's
But,
beautiful.
yeah, I mean, and notice how like that whole actor bit there, where it's talking about the actor, it's not talking about the alcoholic exactly. It's talking about people.
Yeah. No, this is one of the things that has been incredible to me. I was talking to somebody about it. A lot of the things that I'm learning in this little corner are affirmations of things that my rabbis were saying, which I was not capable of listening to. And now that I am hearing it in a different way, I realize how right it was when they first said it.
Yeah, so that little area there, I think, is so they spend all the way up to that point, basically giving you all these different ways of the symptoms showing up and the phenomenon of craving and all that stuff. And then they say, like, this is what it looks like when you drink. Obviously, when you start, you can't stop. And then when you stop, you can't stop starting for some reason. And then it spends all 60 pages doing that. And then it gets to pages 60 to 63, and it says, if you have this and you're honest with yourself and you have this, you're fucked. Now we're going to spend the rest of the 100 pages showing you how to surrender your will, basically. So, which isn't really 100 pages. Actually, it's only It's only the next 40 pages showing you how to. That's where the program is. It's like basically pages 60 to 100. So
I bought the book. I still haven't read it, but I have like 50 billion books I'm meaning to read.
Well, the first 164 pages, that's the program. And then the rest of the book is just stories of how people recovered.
So I am in a weird position where I have these books for my classes that I have to read, which I know are full of bullshit, and they lead me the wrong way. And then I have books that I know work and are actually going to be useful when I do become a counselor. And I sometimes wonder if I should not read my textbooks because I don't want them like confusing me, or if what I can do is go through my classes and then read the books that contain actual knowledge. And that will correct any of the bullshit that infected me while going through class.
Yeah, I think you need to keep your bearings about you when you're reading the stuff that they're giving you, and you see it as like internal research, so that you're learning your enemy pretty well.
It is, but at the same time, like I have to write papers. Like the final paper I wrote for my research class last quarter killed me. Like it was emotionally just like gut-wrenching. And so I wrote it sarcastically. I wrote it in such a sarcastic tone. I was hoping my teacher would understand and fail me. And I got a perfect grade. I got a 120 out of 120 on it. And it was just.
Well, actually, it's interesting that you're that affected by writing such an objective paper, or is it not objective?
Oh, no. It was not objective. Like the paper, what killed me was the fact that it was for research, right? Like my other classes, like my diversity and inclusion class, okay, I'm writing a bunch of bullshit, right? That course was supposed to be scientific research. And the conclusion I said, I literally wrote, regardless of the evidence, it will be my job to fit the conclusions to the theory that scholars have provided us. I literally I said the precise opposite of science, and I got it perfect score on it.
Do you think your teacher phoned it in and didn't read?
No,
Okay.
because when I don't write the bullshit, I got an F on one of my papers because it was not sufficiently woke.
I mean, I'm not surprised. I've heard this about so many people in academia. That's a shame. But I mean, at the same point, like, I don't know, what are you going to do? You're kind of stuck in that system. So
I'm getting the license, and then once I'm licensed, I'm just gonna try to avoid all of this bullshit.
Yeah, you just have to pay the dues.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Working? Oh, it's my mic's always.
Yeah, your mic's popping already.
It's a little crackly.
Yeah. When you do decide to read the book, the big book, just let me take you through it, because that's how you're going to know what's. I don't suggest anybody just read the thing if they really want to know how it works and try to figure that out. I mean, you could do that, and then after I'll take you through it and show you what I found, because there's a big difference, you know.
The substance abuse course I was taking, which is a much lower level course than the Masters of Social Work I'm doing, was just so much better. And even so, I'm doing training to be a crisis counselor at a very, very woke suicide hotline, and even that is much more practical and actually like therapeutic than the academic bullshit in my master's degree course, because they actually have to somehow, like, they're not trying to ruin people's lives, and only in academia could you say the opposite of that which would in fact help people. And like, it's infuriating. Like, I'm paying all this money to take courses which teach the opposite of anything that's actually useful and good in the world.
Yeah. I think I once heard Shapiro talk about this years ago, is that he wrote all of his stuff as a woke liberal just to get his degree.
Yeah.
It was a long time ago. Yeah.
You have to. See you, chat.
Guys. Later.
Because it used to be that at least as a conservative, you could stand up and, like, you had to do twice as much work, but you could still get a good grade. But now they'll just fail you.
Wow.
I know so many people who have failed. This one religious Orthodox woman I know, she said she tried for 2 years to get her master's thesis accepted, but because she wouldn't write the woke bullshit, she ended up not being able to graduate.
That's a real shame. That's terrible, actually. So she wasn't willing to compromise, or she couldn't.
It wasn't even that she wasn't willing to compromise. She didn't, like, I was talking to her and she's like, when they would ask her, like it was a research course, right? It was scientific data analysis, right? So whatever she was doing, she would do the honest data analysis, which always made them go like, no, this isn't good.
So it's supposed to be an objective reading of the data, and she has to come to a conclusion.
That's right. And so she was doing objective readings, and it took her 2 years of rewriting her thesis over and over and over again until she just gave up. Because every time they would be like, no, you need to include more information because you have to come up with a woke conclusion. And if the data doesn't support the woke conclusion, and I was like, okay, you have to come to a woke conclusion. That's the point. The point isn't data analysis. Like, I realize you think you're getting a master's degree in data analysis. And she's like, I learned so many things that's useful in work. And I'm like, I'm very glad. But if you want the degree, you have to,
so the course is almost like an effort in taking objective data and fitting the narrative, not reading it.
I'm not making this conclusion. I'm not making this analogy to be offensive, and I hope it won't offend too much. But imagine if I went to a Master's of Divinity at a Christian college, and I tried to submit something that said Jesus isn't the Jewish Messiah.
Yeah, it's gonna be rough.
There's no way they're going to publish that thesis.
I mean, what denomination are you talking about?
Well, he just meant any seminary, but I guess.
Well, I meant
seminary.
I meant one that actually believed in Christianity.
Yeah. So like not So like maybe SBTS or something Baptist Theological Seminary. Yeah, be tough to get in there as a confessing Orthodox Jew.
Yeah, the Dallas Theological Seminary. I mean, like
they may let you.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends. It depends on how bent they are on like Judaic roots.
Yeah.
But it would be interesting if that happened and you were in like a Doctrine of God course and you didn't come to the conclusion that the Trinity was indeed including Christ. And so, I don't know how that would work.
Can Sam, our Unitarian, ever graduate from a Trinitarian?
I think in lots of seminaries, well, the good ones, you have to affirm a confession of faith when you go, many of them. So I don't know that they'll even issue courses to people that aren't affirming it in the first place.
Well, and the fact is, before I enrolled in this Masters of Social Work class, I had to write a thing where I confessed all their confessions, right?
Right.
And it's like, it's just so hilarious how this religion is just another religion. It really is. And it just pretends that its religious faith is
neutral or something.
Is neutral and objective and what everyone should believe in.
Yeah. It's like to them it's like water is wet, right? That everyone should affirm this.
Yep.
Yeah. That's a shame too. But it's not new on the scene. It's some sort of neo-paganism.
It is, but look, what's crazy to me is that like I was applying to University of Alabama, right? And they're making me write a confession to wokeism. And it's like, it's the University of Alabama. Right? If in Alabama, in order to be a social worker, and in West Virginia, and so this is all regulated at the state level. Why are these deep red states requiring, in order to be a psychotherapist? Like, this is what gets me about the whole trans stuff. Everybody keeps on talking about, making it illegal to do this and making it illegal to do that. And it's like, excuse me, why aren't you looking at the doctors who are prescribing these medications, who are prescribing these surgeries, right? It's like, why are we looking in that manner as opposed to, hey, doc, you come to me and you explain to me why you think you should be castrating these children.
Yeah, I agree. I do think that some of these laws are posturing because I don't think they're easily enforceable or will be enforced. I think they're political posturing.
Yeah, they are.
Mm-hmm.
They are.
I'm not even a lawyer, and I could see that.
It's political posturing, although there's also some of it is the doctors in those states want to say, oh, it's the law. I don't have, so they don't get in trouble with their professional organizations or whatever, because they're like, oh, well, it was the legislature. What am I going to do? Right?
Yeah. You can't fight City Hall.
Yeah, they're looking. A lot of these doctors are looking for. Did you listen to Eric Metaxas on Jordan Peterson?
No.
It's worth listening to.
Really? Yeah, I'm sure it's good.
Yeah, Eric Metaxas. I mean, he's. I want to read his book now.
Bonhoeffer book's great, dude.
I definitely want to read the Bonhoeffer. I mean, I've been talking about Bonhoeffer so much on this channel.
It's. I'm not a fan of all the details, of course, and their positions, but it's such a well-written book.
Okay. Yeah, Metaxas is a really interesting guy. I have one of his books over there, but yeah.
There's an audiobook that's readable. That's very good, and even does some of the intro. That might be worth it.
But his book, I mean, he basically said he thinks his book, Letter to a Christian Church, I think it was, or something like that. He basically said it was prophecy. He basically said that.
I'll have to take a listen. Yeah, I didn't even realize he did an interview with him.
It just dropped like yesterday.
Okay, I think he did that Letter to the American Church. Though that statement doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I always hear that when people talk about, but anyway, there isn't a unified church to speak of, but I understand.
There isn't, but there. So what Metaxas said is he usually writes his books so that anyone can read them, but he wrote this to anyone who is a confessing Christian, saying, okay, if you believe in Christianity at all, then you have to ask yourself. And I mean, the fact is that he's very committed to being a Protestant. Like, he wrote his book, a biography of Martin Luther, and he made the most valiant defense of Martin Luther I've ever heard.
He was like an Episcopalian, right? Like a conservative Episcopalian, Metaxas.
I don't know which church. I don't know which church
I think that's
he
it.
attends.
It's odd because the Episcopalians are like, like woke. You know what I mean? Like super woke. So he's a conservative, and I think he's in that camp. Although I could be wrong now. This has been a long time ago. I don't know where he is. Oh shoot! Speaking of things, I'll be back. I have a meeting.
Oh.
See ya.
Okay. I don't know if I'm still going to be here, but okay.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Later.
Why do you like Eric Metaxas? My red flags go up when you're praising his book.
He's hilarious. He's sincere. He's smart.
He does dress well. I'll give you that.
It doesn't say which church he goes to. Eric Metaxas, which church does he do? Attends Calvary St. George's Episcopal Church and lives in Manhattan.
Ooh. I'm looking at his wiki page.
Central Presbyterian Church. Describes himself as a mere Christian.
I He doesn't believe in the election.
He doesn't what?
He doesn't believe in the 2020 election.
This is where my spidey sense tingles as well, because I saw Metaxas on Twitter for months, just denying that Trump had lost, and never really letting go.
So, okay.
And he told his followers not to get the COVID-19 vaccine. Great.
So
I love this guy. So good.
the thing with the election is,
Trey, can you turn your volume up a little bit?
Oh, sorry. Is it better?
A little bit more? Let's see. Do you hear the same thing or do you not hear the same thing that I don't hear? Is his volume a little low?
It's lower now than it was before.
What? I'm putting on my game.
Okay, actually, that got better. So I don't. Yeah, you have to realize that StreamYard does equalize the sound. So yeah, so it's possible you turning up the gain might make them turn down your sound for us.
Okay.
But what was I? Oh, so the 2020 election was not a fair and free election. Biden narrowly won an election that was very obviously rigged. And
so I agree with the first part of that. That Biden narrowly won.
Richard, don't take his bait. Do not take his bait.
It's not bait.
This is bait. Just wait him. He says a dumb statement, and then he's gonna loop it around and give all the nuance, and then we'll be back, and you'll be like, "Okay, I kind of agree." So continue, Jacob.
Okay.
Have you guys read this article?
Is it in Time?
Do you think
Time magazine article? Yes.
Why is there Hebraic letters across the top?
Yeah, that's the background of my.
Oh, that's your. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
This is a Time magazine article.
Yeah.
Okay. The secret history of the shadow campaign that saved the 2020 election. Go ahead and read it, and then tell me that it wasn't a rigged election.
No. Okay. Well, what percentage do you say is rigged? You have to be.
There's no percentage rigged. It was a rigged election. I'm not saying they changed actual votes. That's not what I'm saying.
Thank you. See, you need to tease it out of Jacob to say not the outrageous statement. Okay. Do you think okay.
I'm a Canadian by birth.
Yeah.
And I swore my oath to America the day before the 2020 election, and I immediately went and voted for Joe Biden.
Okay. So
it was my first proud act as an American citizen.
Okay, so
it's rigged. They let an immigrant into the country to vote for Joe Biden.
That's not what I said.
Okay.
I mean, the fact is, and anybody who knew me back during the election knows that I said, I hope that somebody wins in a landslide. Because with all the games that were being played, in order to make sure that Joe Biden wins, if he didn't win, I knew that what did happen would happen, which is all of the Trump people would be like, oh, this was a rigged election. And it was.
I think it was a manufactured crisis.
Oh, there was definitely parts of COVID that were manufactured, and
No.
the Democrats. What?
I'm talking about the Republican, the Trumpy objections to the election.
No, that was not manufactured. No, that was not manufactured. We are getting closer and closer to a civil war, Richard, and I realize
is not helping.
So there's no civil war in a country where the military dominates as strongly as it does.
Okay,
And
you
unless the military is going
obviously
to
don't
fracture-
understand. No, you obviously don't understand how modern civil wars work, and
Okay.
and that's fine. I have I have a video where let me pull this video up for you. Hopefully this is still available. Here we go. Where is it? This is PBS. I assume you believe PBS is a credible news source. Yes?
I mean, every news source has its.
Okay, but Barbara F. Walters is a professor of is a professor at UCSD, and she just wrote a book.
Yeah.
Planet teeming with life. One species is reshaping the world.
So many
I hope this is what we criticize the Wednesday doing. I hope.
From what we eat.
Taking somebody out of context of the.
I am not taking anybody out of context. And Trey, that's offensive. When have I taken people out of context?
I said I hope. I hope.
Have I ever? Do you have an experience of me actually doing that?
Exactly. That's why I say I hope this is. That's all I'm saying.
Paul of Tarsus. Paul of Tarsus.
I don't take him out of context.
Now, my next guest admits that the United States is, as we've been discussing, on a knife's edge, but says it's not too late to rescue democracy. Political scientist Barbara Walter is the author of How Civil Wars Start. And here she explains to Hari Srinivasan how America can prevent another one from happening.
Christian, thanks. Professor Barbara Walter, thanks so much for joining us. You have studied so different types of societies who have been on the brink of, who've been in the middle of a civil war, who've been survived after one. How is America on that timeline? How far along that timeline toward a civil war is the United States?
So we have so much good research from really almost the last 100 years of countries around the world. I actually served on a U.S. government task force that was run through the CIA that was designed to help our government predict where around the world civil wars and political instability and political unrest was likely to break out. The CIA is not allowed to look at the United States. It is absolutely not a politicized organization, and we know very clearly that the two big risk factors are whether a country has a weak and partial democracy, and whether in those countries its political parties had divided along racial, religious, and or ethnic lines. So it really didn't take a lot to know those facts and then look to see what was happening here in the United States. We also know who tends to start civil wars. Most people think it's going to be the poorest members of society, and they have the motive, they have the grievances, they have a reason to rebel, or they think it's the most heavily discriminated, or it's the immigrants, all these groups who are in some ways downtrodden. But again, they don't start civil wars. The groups that tend to start civil wars, especially ethnically based civil wars, are the groups that had once been dominant and are in decline. So they used to dominate politically, economically, and oftentimes socially. And they're losing that position oftentimes because demographics are changing. Again, these are not studies that were done on the United States. These were studies that were done on over 200 different civil wars that we've seen around the world. And if you apply that to the United States, you also see similarities. We've seen a significant rise in violent extremism since 2008. Some of it's been on the left, but the vast majority of it has been on the far right. And it's been perpetrated almost exclusively by white men. And again, if you look at the history of the United States, States, the group that had been dominant since the very inception of our country were white men. They also tended to be Christian, and they are losing that position. It's no longer guaranteed that you're going to get into the best schools or get the best jobs or have economic security your whole life. Suddenly, there's a
So you can listen to the entire thing if you like. She wrote a whole book about it, and she's absolutely right. And the funny thing is, this is the exact thing that's actually going on with the CRC. Is you see the people who are losing their inherited position, their position of leadership, and because things are changing, they are committing a civil war.
I can't believe nobody has talked about how cute my dog is yet.
Your dog is incredibly cute.
So I want to say that I understand your emphasis on process now.
Thank you.
Yeah, but you just had to show me that video, and now your concerns have context. I get it.
Glad to hear it.
Are we going to get Helter Skelter? Is that what's going to happen? It sounds like we may get Helter Skelter. I don't know what to do with
Look, all I can tell you is we are looking at political instability, greater and greater political instability. The Supreme Court decision about affirmative action yesterday was beautiful and great, and I am very happy that that's helped calm things down. There are ways in which there are many things which make me hopeful, including Elon Musk buying Twitter, Tucker Carlson being on Twitter. There are many things that are helping calm down the political unrest. But ultimately, I am worried about the United States having a civil war because our political processes are falling apart.
Okay, that's a fine thing to say, but Eric McCaskill is not going to help us, and I do not think that him calling the church to task is a good thing.
So this is where you completely misunderstand the difference between actually talking things through and authoritarianism, which leads to violent revolt. If you actually have fair processes where people feel that they are bought into the system, where you have a fair election as opposed to the type of election we had in 2020, where people can actually discuss what they're trying to, they can campaign freely, then people will accept the election. But when you have the oppression that you did, the silencing of people that you did, that's you're going to end up with civil war.
The Republican Party literally threw out its roadmap for America and said we're campaigning on Trump's ego.
Okay.
The Republican Party had no plan, and they embraced it.
You are completely not listening to what I'm saying. I'm talking about the fact that Republicans were in fact censored all through 2020, the 2020 election.
Okay.
I mean,
censorship is bad.
So how are they censored?
Twitter, Facebook, all of the major social media were censoring.
I heard a lot of people I didn't like.
It started.
And yeah, you heard a lot of people you didn't like, but there were a lot more people you didn't hear. That's the problem.
Uh-oh. Can't hear you, Trey.
You can't?
Now we can.
Okay. Jacob.
So that's a great dog.
Thanks. Yeah, I like her. She licks me a ton.
Right
I don't know why.
like Neutrino says, censorship of the laptop story.
That is a political football.
That is not a political
also-
football, Richard.
Oh, yes,
that
it
is
is.
you. That is you not caring about the rights of other Americans.
No, hold up.
That is you dismissing
Jacob.
the basic freedoms of other Americans.
Of Hunter Biden to conduct shady business overseas?
Richard, you are smarter than this. You
No,
understand.
Like I come out of obviously a pretty different news environment than you do.
No,
And so it's not about-
Richard. No,
It's not
Richard.
about being smart or not.
No, Richard.
It's
The
about
New York
squaring-
Post. The New York Post was locked out of their Twitter account.
Okay.
Is that wrong?
Well, did it suppress the story?
Richard, is it wrong that the New York Post was locked out of their Twitter account?
Well, Twitter's a private company.
You
that made a
can't
decision.
even admit to basic right and wrong, Richard.
Oh, no, this is not about basic right and wrong.
No, Richard.
Is
How
corporation-
immoral can you be?
Is a private corporation allowed
stop,
to
Richard,
use
stop. How immoral can you be? How dare you?
No, how dare you yell at me?
Because you are being an evil person right now, Richard.
I wear that as a badge of pride, right? Like we have a clear distinction between.
Okay, I'm not going to tolerate that.
How old's
I'm
the
not going to
dog?
tolerate that.
The dog is 9 years old.
Oh,
Yep.
what's his name? Or her name?
Bailey.
Bailey to her.
Yep.
Okay. Cute. So upon more research, it was against Twitter's terms of service because it had hacked material.
Trey, come on. No, it wasn't. First of all, it didn't have hacked material. Second, it was not against their terms of service. This was a clear wrong. This was something that every American should be able to admit. This was wrong. And everybody has admitted that it's wrong, but people are still not admitting that it's wrong. How, like, if you can't defend the basic rights of other Americans, we're gone. We're done. That's it. No more country. Civil war. That's all there is left.
I'm just stating what the information is provided. If you want to disagree with that, you can disagree with that. I recommend doing more research, and I'll just leave it at that.
Trey, everybody has. Jack has admitted that it was wrong to censor the story. Vijaya Gandhi has admitted that it was wrong to censor the story. Everybody has admitted that it was wrong to censor that story. Yet we still have people who are not willing to admit that it's wrong to censor that story.
What story?
There's a lot in that statement.
I don't
feel like arguing with you.
So, like, is it important or
what?
I don't follow politics at all. So, like, is it important?
Okay, so this is what happened. The FBI.
Why don't you look at the wiki to see
the FBI knew that there's a laptop that Hunter Biden filled with, like, people called it the laptop from hell, filled with proof of Biden's corruption. Okay. The FBI then engineered all the social media companies censoring that story. Then when the story broke, with the FBI's involvement, all of the social media companies censored that story before the election. And yes, it did in fact affect the election. And it's like these are not facts. These are just plain facts. These are just plain facts. But people pretend that they're not because they are politically motivated to lie about what happened.
I'm just not. Okay. Oh wait, that was a response to Andrew.
What'd you say?
Yeah. I don't think it's important.
So I'm going to quote what Richard is typing. Twitter is not the government, as if that matters. It's just not that important to me because he doesn't actually care about the rights of other Americans as long as they disagree with him. He doesn't care about their rights. What about the triumph? What aboutism? What about? Because fairness has nothing to do with it. What about, right? What about? As opposed to actually like saying, okay, you know what? That was wrong. Having an actual civil society. If this is how we're going to act, like I have that book here, When Crime Pays, by Milan Vaishnav, right? If you want to understand what's going on in the United States and how our democracy is actually falling apart, look at what's going on in India. And Milan Vaishnav's book, When Crime Pays, explains it exactly. We are destroying this country precisely with the type of things that Richard's doing. I'm sorry, I'm tired of this. I'm going to end the broadcast.
Fine.